if this is not your first time seeing a whale, just pop up your hand.
We've seen them before.
Okay, a lot of people seeing a beluga for the first time. Welcome to the aquarium, everybody. This one isn't quite a show per se. We won't be talking a lot about the natural history of these animals quite so much. Instead, we really want to highlight just how it is we work with these animals, why we do it, and actually how we go about working with these animals on a daily basis. Those of you joining us from underwater, just a reminder, if you look at the screen right above where you're looking through, you may be able to see what's going on above the water and below the water at the same time, so well chosen if you're sticking around down there. If you look at the screen right above you, you may see some people in red walking their way into the habitat. Those are our trainers, and they are working with our two lovely, beautiful beluga whales that live here at the aquarium. So let me introduce you to who you're looking at right now. Going across the front of the habitat, we have Kristen. Kristen is not a beluga whale. She's working with a beluga whale today. That beluga's name is Keela. She's the younger of our two whales. She had her 19th birthday here last week. She was the first beluga whale both conceived and born in a Canadian aquarium, which happened to be right here. We're very proud of our baby here. Not to be outdone, we have Indy moving his way across the background here. Indy is working with the older of our two beluga whales. That is Aurora. Aurora is Keela's mother. She's in her late 20s. How about a welcoming round of applause for our trainers and our whales here? We really do want to highlight how it is that the trainers end up working with these animals. And one of the questions that we seem to get more often around here at the aquarium is, why do you bother training animals to begin with? Well, there's actually three major reasons why we do it, so we're going to walk you through that right now. If you look at these whales right now, especially those of you underwater getting a pretty good view, they're pretty substantial animals. They're about 4 meters long and about 800 to 900 kilograms a piece. They're pretty big, and that means they take a lot of work to keep healthy. So the first thing that we train for is what we call animal husbandry behaviors, which we're actually getting a little sample of here right now. If you look at their tails here, does everyone see those dark gray lines along the back of their tail? Those are their blood vessels that are very close to the surface of the skin. So if we want to do something like take a blood sample to take to our veterinarians, well, that's where we're going to be pulling it from. So presenting different parts of their body for different kinds of analysis are actually a really important thing that we train, even though it may not be kind of the flashiest or the showiest thing that you can do with an animal. If you look at those kinds of basic husbandry behaviors, basically anything you can do at a doctor's office, we can do with our animals here at the aquarium. Has anyone ever been to the doctor and you got past the little cup and said, fill this? Yeah, we basically do the same thing here with our animals, with a lot of different body layouts that we can work through here. If you see them exposing different parts of their bodies, you see Aurora's upside down and holding her breath for Indy in the back there right now, and Keela's doing the same thing as her mother here in the front. This is the kind of body layout where we can grab urine samples, fecal samples, and even things like voluntary ultrasounds from our animals here as well. When Aurora was pregnant with Keela, we were able to see her developing inside of her mother with the use of this ultrasound-trained behavior. We can also look at their internal organs and other really complicated things to make sure that, yes, their insides are looking just as good at their outsides as any particular time. Now you see, we're asking for them to present different body parts. For ultrasounds, we're asking to present for things like blood draws here, but you'll notice that we aren't actually doing those things right now. There's actually a really important reason why we do that. Has anyone ever taken their cat to the vet? Just raise your hand if you've ever taken a pet to the veterinarian. Did your cat like the experience? No, usually not. But if there is a 20-pound cat that's kind of stressed out, you can pretty much pick it up and stick it over on the vet's table, and that's the end of it. 900-kilogram whales here, so if they don't want to participate, they don't have to, and that's actually okay. But in order to make them more likely to want to participate, we just practice those same behaviors over and over again, so that if it ends up being a trip to the vet, if blood is actually being drawn at that point, they're used to just showing their tails and having someone push along the blood vessels several times a day. So it's really just part of the routine. It's something that's not out of the ordinary. For your cat, it definitely is, because we don't take them to the vet each and every day of the year. But for the belugas, they're doing it all the time. So it just becomes a matter of routine for them, which we think is very important to make sure that everything is as stress-free and as positive as it can be. Now, also why we train these animals has to do with preventing any problems from coming up in the first place. These are quite strong animals. They do need to be kept in good physical condition, which those of you in the splash zone right now, you have a pretty good taste of just how strong and how powerful they can be. How about a round of applause for our very brave people over there in the far side of the splash zone. Now for Keela to do that, she has to be kept in pretty good shape. And so we train our animals for a lot of different exercise behaviors. Things like moving a lot of water, that is pretty heavy, so it's a good way, almost like lifting weights inside the water here. Any kinds of leaps or splashes you might see happening are great ways to make sure that they're exercising their muscles and using them to their full capability. Those of you on the other side of the splash zone may want to cover up. Not bad. When we are working with the animals for this kind of high energy behavior, it's kind of like if you go to the gym. If you just go by yourself, yeah, you may exercise for a while, but maybe not to the full extent that you normally would. Here, if you work with an exercise buddy, such as the trainers we have around in here, you work out just that little bit more. And by keeping their bodies in top physical condition, we're making sure that the animals stay healthy before any problems actually arise. So it's a good way to make sure that their exercise regimen is kept pretty strenuous there and that they are physically fit. Now, there is one other important reason that we tend to train around it here, and that has to do with their mental stimulation. If you're a fan of things like crossword puzzles, Sudoku, anything like that, you know that you're using problem-solving skills that you might not use otherwise. Belugas are incredibly intelligent animals. They're great problem solvers, and usually their very capable minds would be put to the problems of things like, how do I avoid a predator, or how do I get enough food to eat? At the aquarium, oh, we're just gonna wait for that plane to pass over here. At the aquarium, we don't introduce predators into their habitat. We generally think that's a bad idea. And they get all the food that they need every day. So they need to use their problem-solving skills in other ways. So that's when we start training new, unusual, different kinds of things. We put combinations together. In the back there, you just saw Keela popped up, and then we've got Aurora doing the same thing over here. That popping out of the water, shaking your head back and forth, and vocalizing or making a noise all at the same time is kind of the mental equivalent of you trying to pat your head, rub your belly, stomp your foot, and spin around in circles all at the same time. It can get a little difficult to do for a lot of people. So making sure you're doing a lot of things that you already know how to do in new and interesting combinations, make sure that the animals are still actively problem solving. They're always learning something new and try to maintain or refresh themselves on things they already know. These kinds of things make sure that they are still problem solving, their minds are still fully engaged, and we can build a very positive relationship with them. Those of you in the splash zone again, maybe not quite as much this time. Oh, there we go. Not bad. There's a good shot of Keela right there in the very front. So that's part of why we train the animals, but how we go about doing it, that's where we get a lot of other questions too. You may have noticed that the belugas are not speaking English and we are not speaking beluga, so we have to find some other way to make sure that we're communicating back and forth across one another. However, I'm not the best person to tell you about how all this kind of starts off, so I'm actually going to pass off the microphone to one of our trainers here. Kristen, since you get to work with whales every day, would you mind talking to people about how you actually do it?
I'd love to, Colin. Hey everyone, I'm over here giving you guys a wave so you can see where that voice is coming from, and thanks for waving back. Working with marine mammals is something that I've always wanted to do, and I'm fortunate to build a strong relationship with Keela here for the just over 2 years that I have worked with her. Building and maintaining that strong relationship does involve the training of new behaviors, and I'm going to walk you through something that Keela and I have been working through over the past couple of days. So actually, Indy and I revisited this behavior. This is a behavior that Keela knew, oh gosh, probably, what, 5 years ago maybe? And it's called Send Slide Up, and you actually got a preview of it there at the front of the glass. So basically we want Keela to come and slide up in the front, gives you guys a nice good picture of her, and that's basically hopefully what she's going to do right now. Good job, Keela. So this is a behavior that is relatively new in Keela's repertoire as of recently. So, basically, what we've been struggling with is that Keela is getting a little bit confused because there are a couple of behaviors that happen in that front area. And so, she's been confusing this send slide up behavior with a few other behaviors. So basically, I'm going to ask her for another one of those behaviors that goes in that front area, and I'm going to give a nice big hand signal so that she can't possibly, hopefully, confuse it with the hand signal that I just gave her. And it looks a little bit like this. You going to go do that one? Where are you going? Over here. This one? There we go. Now let's see if she goes and does this behavior. If she does this correctly, the splash zone is going to get really wet again. So that's your splash zone warning. And it's looking pretty promising. Oh, nope. So this is exactly what I'm talking about. So Keela is having a little bit of a hard time distinguishing those two things, and that's okay. I'm going to have her come back, and I'm actually going to give her another opportunity to do this behavior. Now there's never any punishment, we only use positive reinforcement. So basically, I'm going to give Keela about a 2 or 3 second timeout. I'm sure most of you in the audience are familiar with timeouts. Looks a little bit like this, and then that's okay. Let's try something different. Good job. What about this one? Nice job, Keela. We'll give her a reward for that. She succeeded in that. Let's see if we can't get this behavior. It's called a catapult, and it is a very fun behavior, if we can get it. This one? What about this one? Alright, so I've asked her for a different one. It's not quite as splashy, but if she does it, it will be a little bit. But it's not looking super good. And that's okay, because that just means that I'm not giving Keela enough information to succeed right now, so I'm actually going to put this on hold, and we're going to have to revisit it. But hopefully, my hope is within the next week that Keela's going to be able to distinguish any behavior that I tell her to do in that area, and we won't have any sort of these problems. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a rest right there, and go ahead and do something different that's a little bit more that Keela knows and knows how to do well. So let's ask her for this one. There you go. That's a fun one. Yeah. Good job, Keela. Give her a big handful for that. She did do that behavior correctly. Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to give her a round of applause. And then I'm going to revisit how I'm going to give her enough information to succeed in this session. Back to you, Colin.
Thank you very much, Kristen. How about one more round of applause for these guys? They're working hard out here in the sun every day. Good. So you'll notice there were a few different tools that Kristen was using on how to actually communicate with Keela. Did everyone hear the whistle that she was blowing? The whistle is just the signal that the whales can hear that means, good job, come get your reward. You did what we asked of you. So when she did the behavior that Kristen didn't ask for, you didn't hear the whistle, it was just a neutral response, and then she moved on to something that Keela already knew. This is how we build a training regimen based on positive reinforcement. Reinforcement just means anything that the whales seem to find rewarding. So it can be food, a lot of people notice that one. You'll notice a lot of touching, tongue rubs, rubbing across the top may be happening during the program as well. There may be other toys, some other treats that pop into the habitat as well. Just anything the whales seem to enjoy, we can give them that as a reward. We always reward them no matter what's going on here. So just when we have a neutral response, if we moved on to something else that we think they should do, we can reward that one right away. And then we revisit the behavior that we're trying to work on at that particular time. If they still do what we don't ask, we move on, we try it again another day, and we keep going on with the session to reward them for things that we know they can do, to keep that relationship really positive. Everything has to be kept on that positive note because, again, these are 800 to 900 kilogram animals. If they don't want to participate, they don't have to. So we want to make sure that we're a very positive kind of focus for them, and that we're always something that's kind of fun, something new, something that they want to go and communicate with on a regular basis here to make sure that, yeah, we can keep working with them each and every day. That's a bit about how we train the animals and a bit about why, but we actually missed out on one important reason why we train animals here at the aquarium. And that has to do with the research that we participate in. We are the premier whale research facility in Canada, and we do a lot of studies here that just wouldn't be possible in open water. For example, one study we're working on right now is something called a chuff. So if you look at the blowhole at the top of the whales there is where they're breathing from. It's actually kind of an evolved section of their nose that's just moved to the top of their head. So if they exhale very sharply out of that blowhole, they can spit out a whole lot of things like you would spit out of your nose. Anyone want to guess what comes out of there? Snot, absolutely, yes. We're looking at beluga boogers over in here. That chuff is that sharp exhalation, but by collecting that mucus, we can actually get really valuable information on these animals. By analyzing it, you can find out where in their hormone cycle they are, is the animal pregnant or not, what's the sex of the animal, and a whole host of other things that you can't really get from any other setting, except for trying to draw a blood sample, which usually doesn't work out well with wild whales. So, when our scientists come here, they try to collect the chuff from our animals, and because they already know the answers ahead of time, they can see if their technique to analyze the chuff or the mucus is actually working out correctly. So far, the researchers are getting it after 8 samples from the same animal. If you're trying to study them out in the ocean, 8 samples is not good enough. You need to get it down to 1 sample to make sure that it's useful as a field technique. So they're going to continue with the study here with our animals until they get the technique right, which will then give them another tool to use to study animals out in the open ocean. You can really see how it is only possible in a place like this to work with these animals to better understand their species just in general around in here. That's a bit about why we train the animals. It's a bit about how we do it, and we just want to say thank you all so much for showing an interest with our animals here today. Just by stepping through our doors, your information, your money has gone directly back into the research and the care of these animals because we're a non-profit conservation organization. Just by taking that interest, you've taken one small step to help ensure that we learn more about these animals, we continue to take better care of them, and we ensure that their wild populations are still looking healthy for years to come. On behalf of myself, the whales, and of course our fantastic trainers here, thank you all so much for joining us for our Caring for Beluga session. We hope you enjoy the rest of your time here at the Vancouver Aquarium. Take care, everyone.